Can you do the same thing over and over in 19 years? In this film, and based on a true story, there is one guy like this, hard working for over 19 years to escape from one of the most protected prison. I will introduce to you a famous film about prison escape, Shawshank. In 1947, the young bank's deputy director named Andy Dufresne was charged with the murder of her wife and lover, based on unclear indirect evidence, and sentenced to life sentences at the famous Shawshank prison in Maine. In prison, Ellis Boyd Redding was denied parole after serving 20 years of his life sentence. Later that day, he witnessed new prisoners being put in prison, and Andy is one of them. They bet who will cry first, and Red put a charge on Andy. After meeting prison guard Samuel Norton and guard Captain Byron Hadley, new inmates are washed and put in cells. One of the prisoners cried that night, and Captain Hadley severely wounded the man, and then died due to the lack of timely ambulance. After a month of adjusting to his new life, Andy exposed Red, ordered him a rock drill to pursue his hobby of rock collecting. Andy started out with a job at the prison laundry. Here, he is harassed and raped by a group of gay prisoners called the Sisters. He endured bullies for nearly 2 years but never complained. One day, while putting asphalt on the roof of the factory, Andy overhears Captain Hadley discussing tax on the property Hadley is about to receive. Though nearly thrown from the roof, his knowledge of financial matters made Hadley feel beneficial. To get 3 bottles of beer for each of his workmates, Andy showed Hadley a tax break. In one scene, Andy wants Red to take a picture of Rita Hayworth back to his cell. When he left the cinema, he was attacked by the Sisters and continued to be beaten. Spent 1 month in the prison infirmary to recover. Captain Hadley, in revenge, brutally beat the leader of the group, Boggs, permanently paralyzed this prisoner. Andy is no longer tortured by them, and inmates rumor that Andy is being protected by guards for helping Captain Hadley. When Andy returned from the infirmary, he saw a gift from Red, a great Rita Hayworth poster. The rumors of helping Andy's Captain Hadley spread, and he was appointed as the assistant to the elderly inmate Brooks Hadlin, who oversees the prison library, wrote to the Maine State Senate, asking for money to support library development. When other guards began to ask him for financial help, Andy set up a temporary office to provide tax and financial services. His group of customers kept growing, almost all prison staff, guards from other prisons, and even the director of Norton Prison. After Andy spent nearly 10 years at Shawshank, he and Red during a work session, found Brooks holding a knife against Haywood's neck. After Andy convinces Brooks to release Haywood, Red asks Haywood to explain why Brooks acted like this. Haywood told Red and his friends that he just came to say goodbye to Brooks. The amnesty for Brooks was granted after serving in prison in 1905. Now he was so accustomed to life in prison that he was afraid to return to the outside world. Outside the prison, Brooks noticed only loneliness, isolation, and tedious packing work. Despite being a respected man in prison, as Red said, he is just an old man with rheumatism from the outside world. In addition, he was not sympathetic to society and harassed by his supervisor, who hated him for a long time, whom he once intended to kill to get back to prison. Finally, he wrote a letter to his friends at Shawshank before etching the words, "Brooks was here" on the rafters. Then hanged himself in his room. Guard Samuel Norton exploited Andy's talent and come up with a project, getting inmates to work on local construction projects. In this way, he exploited the prisoners' free labor for his personal benefit, and Andy stood behind helping him wash the money, hide funds for Norton, by creating a fake identity called Randall Stevens. To keep Andy happy, Norton expanded the prison library, and Andy was given the opportunity to help fellow inmates with their high school diplomas. He also allows Andy to keep some of the contraband goods openly in his cell, including grinding stones, stone curtains, and various types of posters, and also a huge picture of Marilyn Monroe, replacing the previous Rita Hayworth picture. In 1965, a young prisoner named Tommy Williams entered Shawshank prison for theft. Andy expressed a liking to this guy and taught Tommy so that he could get a high school diploma. After attempting to complete the test, Tommy heard Andy's case from Red and revealed unexpected information. Elmo Blatch, one of his fellow inmates, described the killing of the two as coinciding with the description of Andy's wife and her lover, along with how her husband as a bank employee was blamed. Andy hoped that he would be able to appeal with Tommy's help, and he went to Norton for advice and assistance. When Norton heard the story, he tried to convince him that Tommy only sympathized with his situation and made up the story to make him happy. Andy assured the guard that he would never reveal the corruption at the prison. Afraid of the information that would come out if Andy was released, Norton kept him in an isolated cell for a month and orders Hadley to kill Tommy after the young man said he was willing to testify for Andy. After disguising the killing of Tommy with a camp escape, Norton told Andy that he would still receive protection from the guards only if he could keep quiet and continue to help Norton embezzle funds. If he doesn't, Norton will throw him to the sister and destroy everything Andy has built, including the library. Then he put him on another month of solitary confinement. After spending 2 months in solitary confinement, Andy is returned to his cell in a state of failure, surrendering to fate. While in the courtyard, he asks Red a strange thing, telling him that if he is released, he must go to a particular site in a meadow near Buxton to find something that was buried there. Andy's friends worry that he might commit suicide like Brooks because he just requested a long piece of rope. However, the next morning, Andy was not seen in the cell, but only a poster by Raquel Welch. In a mood of anger because Andy suddenly disappeared, guard Norton threw the stone on Andy's windowsill of the poster. It passed through and fell into a tunnel. The guard tore the photo and saw hole size just enough for the average man to pass through. Officer Norton was furious and forced all his staff to look out for the escape, but only found a pile of clothes, a soap pad and stone hammers. In the flashback footage, it shows as Andy tries to carve his name on the wall at the beginning of the film, a piece of wall fell, and over 19 years at Shawshank, Andy spent countless hours chiseling the wall. To conceal this, he stealthily spread the stone he had dug out at night onto the courtyard while walking. He completed his escape after crawling a 500-yard stretch through a sewer pipe. After exiting, Andy uses the fake identity of Randall Stevens that he previously created, a fake character with a complete birth certificate, driver's license, and social security number. Wearing Norton's clean suit and shoes, Andy pulled out all the money he'd sent over the years to Norton. Over $370,000 according to Red. See it as a service charge for the unfair treatment and his job in prison. He also sent evidence of the offense to a local newspaper, tells about corruption and crimes committed by the guard and the guards. The morning the news was published, the police pulled to the prison. Byron Hadley was captured, said to whimper like a little girl while being led away. Norton committed suicide with a gun in his office before the authorities got in. In Red's words, Red argues that the last thing that passed Norton's head was not the bullet, but how the hell Andy Dufresne managed to get past him. Shortly thereafter, in 1967, Red was finally released on amnesty after spending 40 years in Shawshank prison. After trying to get used to life outside the prison, he thought of doing something to cancel his pardon and go back to Shawshank, but he remembers the promise he made to Andy just before Andy escaped. One day, Red goes to the field at Buxton that Andy told him about. Under a prominent lava rock, he found a small metal box with money and instructions from Andy. He traveled by bus to Fort Hancock, Texas, and eventually reunited with Andy in Zihuatanejo on the Pacific coast of Mexico. A great movie. Do you like this film? Leave your comment below, like, share for your friend. Follow us for more video. Thank you for watching.